Welcome to the Stir It Up podcast, where our purpose is to encourage, challenge, lift up, and stir up the body of Christ to love and good works. Hello, and welcome to the Stir It Up podcast. I'm Michelle Dowdy.
And I'm Starla Harbin.
It's good to see you, Starla.
Thank you. From a distance.
Right, here we go. We could sing that. It's not bad though, because we were discussing we're face to face because we're seeing each other, each other's face instead of just kind of we turn to the side. We try to turn this way to y'all, but we're on the same side of this table. So maybe someday we'll have a different configuration, but for now,
yes, we can be face to face.
When we're in person, we're kind of side by side, But anyway, well, how have you been doing?
Good. All is well. I had a fail recipe the other night.
Oh, did you?
Well, I've made it before. It's a loaf pan pound cake. So it's not as big as making the big bundt cake size. Yeah. And so cooked it on 325 like it said. And I had even written in my notes, 58 minutes is perfect. So I set it for 58 minutes and got it out and just let it cool. I did check it, but I guess I didn't check it in the right place with the toothpick. And so I came in, I was singing in the office trying to get some songs learned. Yeah. And that thing had just settled in the middle.
Oh, no.
What in the world? I've made this so many times. But I put my oven on convection.
Oh, okay.
325.
Okay.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
I just regular bake. Like it wasn't done.
Oh,
so the last top layer. So I just did surgery on it.
There you go.
Put it on a cutting board, and then just sort of the end pieces were cooked.
I was going to say, I bet the ends were done and not.
As we got to the middle, it got mushy, kind of on that. Not that much of a layer. So I left a little bit of it, but we kind of lost that good crunchy part of the top.
Yeah, don't you hate that? Yeah.
So, I mean, we can do things for multiple times and still make a goof.
Still have a fail. Yeah.
The convection made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of the tricky thing about a pound cake, I think, is just the time, because it's almost like you can, I don't know if it has to do with how much, you add the eggs one at a time, and maybe, I don't beat it exactly the same amount, you might overdo it,
you can't
something.
Do it too much.
So I don't know. Sometimes it seems like it takes longer to get done than others. You don't want it to get too crispy, but
I'll show you the recipe sometime, because it really is good. Or if you need to take dessert to somebody, it's not like taking them a whole pie, or when it's two people, or you can just slice pieces up and take it to somebody, and then you've still got a little bit left for you,
and stuff like that they can eat for breakfast too. So
I had a piece this morning.
Yeah. So that's good. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we want to continue our study now, and for y'all that may just be joining us, we've been going through this study, Why Submit? Discovering the Key to a Contented Life. So, just kind of proposing that is the key to a contented life, is surrendering fully to the Lord and to His precepts, to His plan, His purposes for our lives, and we'll have true peace, freedom, joy, love, all those fruits of the Spirit when we do that, when we're fully surrendered and submitted. So this is just kind of taking a look. We've been going through this and just, taking a look at some of those roles that we might have as women where, we come under the authority of someone else, well, men and women, and then, where we might be over someone else. As far as authority, and just how all those relationships should work. So anyway, hope you've been enjoying this, but that's just kind of, if you are just kind of tuning in right now and you're like, well, what is all this about? That sounds like such an odd title. That is what we're talking about. We're really talking about submitting to the Lord, and in that is where our contentment comes, not, it does involve people, your interactions with people, but it's ultimately the Lord that you're that we're talking about surrendering to, and that bringing that freedom and contentment. So, so we want to move on to, we're in chapter 7 now. And I titled this chapter A Gentle and Quiet Spirit. So this first little subheading is called Obedience is Better Than Sacrifice. And we have the foundational scripture there for this chapter. So Starla, you want to read that? 1 Samuel 15:22.
Yes, it says, "Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams."
Right. So really the Lord, I mean, more than that thing that we sacrifice to him, he wants our obedience, our heart, our surrender. I think that just, exemplifies that so well. And I was thinking back to a time when Mark, my husband Mark, for those of you, again, who are not tuning in, or who are tuning in who don't maybe know us, but there was a time, when was this? Maybe 15 years ago or so, Mark? 15, 20 years ago? I'm trying to think. Huh?
What was you going to say?
Oh, about the prayer of obedience.
That was 22 years ago, 23 years ago.
Okay, 23 years ago. I'm a little behind here. But many years ago, so was thinking back to a time when a prayer that Mark prayed, he didn't make a New Year's resolution, but during the New Year, he went into his office, and it just kind of sensed the Lord stirring in his heart just to pray this prayer and say, Lord, I don't know exactly what it is that I'm even praying this, but I just feel like I need to say to you, whatever you want me to do, I will do, and I want to be obedient to you. Well, during this time, he had recording studio, had a couple of partners in that, and then he also was a paid player at Blacksher Place, a paid accompanist. Well, okay, yeah, it's Christ Place now, but I mean, then it was Blacksher Place 20-something years ago. So anyway, that was, we were always involved in the local church. He would have been there playing whether but they just, at some point along the way, they decided to start paying him for doing that. But that wasn't really, a part of really what he would consider, his living or whatever. But anyway, so it was primarily the studio. Well, so about maybe a month after that, he started to get calls from churches that needed an interim worship leader. And so he just said, no, because, we were at Blacksher Place. This was, we were really involved, and this was just the way life was. We couldn't see it being any other way. So about the third one, and I won't go too detailed into this, but he, the person said, before you say no, like they knew he might say no. And so she was asking him to, to consider it in a certain way, pray about it, whatnot. And so then about the same time, so all those things started happening. Well, back during this time in the recording studio, he had several projects lined up, and the way we used to do that is you'd get a pretty sizable deposit from somebody, so that, when you booked the studio time and anything else that needed to be done, then, you didn't lose money if they canceled or whatever. Well, it had several things lined up, and then several things started to cancel. And it was where, the situation behind the canceling was such that he felt like that, and the partners, they felt like they needed to give the deposits back. They could not, in good conscience, keep those. So, so things kind of started, things that were going well started falling apart kind of over here. And then these opportunities started coming. And so that, looking back, we could see, well, that, this is in response to that prayer of obedience. There was a choice to make. So it eventually happened that, for a season, he did serve full time, in the local church. And so that, the Lord orchestrated those circumstances, so he was able to move out of the studio for a number of years and served. So that obedience, at that time, obedience involved going. We had to go and leave what was familiar. We even moved to Alabama for a time, and served a church there. So so that time it involved leaving. And then there was another time that he had an opportunity to go and sort of like a dream job. He would have been serving with a mentor, and it was all a done deal. And he had a dream, and it felt like the Lord spoke to him through that dream and said, "Don't go. Don't go." And it was at that time, the obedience involved staying and just being steadfast in what we were doing at that moment, and not going. So sometimes that obedience can look different. It can look like surrendering something and going and doing something new. And then sometimes it can be staying and just being steadfast and faithful in the thing that he has you doing right at that moment. So anyway, obedience better than sacrifice. I probably should have him over here on this side, but he has a cold, which is one reason we're doing this, so Starla doesn't get sick. And I'm hoping I don't get sick. So
Right. Oh goodness.
yeah, but okay. So anything? I mean, I know you could probably speak to that too, Starla, about y'all. I mean, you had a similar experience where the Lord called you when y'all were serving at First Baptist Snellville and called you out to
to the road,
really to the unknown.
Yeah, to leave everything that was comfortable and familiar, and take our little family, and we bought a fifth wheel and a dually truck, and we put what we had in storage. We sold a lot of stuff. Of course, we haven't been married too terribly long to accumulate, but and then for 13 years we traveled living by faith and trusting the Lord for opportunities. But even in the season of church planting, as we've done in the last 7 years, there was an opportunity that came my way that to everyone else's sort of, if you put a measure on it, it was sort of a pinnacle thing in ministry that I was being invited or asked to do. And here I am over here church planting, and it would have been easy. It would have met some needs that we had, but that's not where the Lord wanted. And, so you have to, just because I think that other opportunity, Mark was going to get to serve with a dear friend.
Yes.
And I mean, it just looked and appeared awesome. But what the Lord said it to his heart was, don't go. It's not the right thing. And so, I've had that experience too. And we just have to be, our hearts and minds have to be turned toward the Holy Spirit and listen, because that could have all fallen apart if I would have said yes. I don't know, but I knew God had called us here for this season, and I was not to stray from that.
Right. Yeah. Just having that discernment and learning to listen. And, some things we don't have to pray about. They're just plainly in the scripture, but I think the longer we walk with the Lord, and then we know his voice, Jesus says, "My sheep know my voice." So the longer we walk with him, the more we do know his voice. But, thinking about authority, like we were talking about last week, if we are under someone's authority, we take on their character. Think about a workplace like, let's say, Chick-fil-A or even Disney, if you've ever been down there, the happiest place on earth, just how, and maybe they're faking it, but
I'm sure some are.
that is part of the job, and you take on that that character. And there have been those studies done that if someone is really depressed and they try to fake it, people always say fake it till you make it. Well, there is some benefit in that, because the more, if you try to smile, if you talk, if you put on a certain persona, even if it's fake at first,
Right.
you start to feel better. And those studies have been done. So there is a certain certain benefit to fake it till you make it, even if you don't feel like, work your way into that
Yes.
feeling, or into that culture.
Yeah.
But
Yes. You forget about your woes, I guess you could say, and it sort of propels you into a different environment, which helps you.
right. Yeah, and Colossians 3:14, it talks about us putting on love. It says put on love. So we're actually, God is love.
Right.
1 John 4:8 and 4:6, and then again verse 16, God is love. So if we put on love, we're putting on his very character. So we want to do that just like those Disney employees, and just like Chick-fil-A, my pleasure kind of thing. We want to put on God's character. And then, we've been referencing that 1 Peter 3:4. You want to read that about the gentle and quiet spirit?
But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious.
Yeah. So gentle and quiet spirit. Now, those seem to be pretty hard to come by these days, a gentle and quiet spirit. And, everybody has different temperaments. Some people are more just boisterous and outgoing and loud and whatever. I'm not saying, and I don't think scripture is saying, that we need to change our natural temperament, but just, when there is difficulty or strife, how are you going to respond to things? A gentle and quiet spirit, or one that's just, somebody's got to calm you down, or, you just kind of lose yourself or whatever. So I think that cultivation of a calm, gentleness is a fruit of the Spirit. So the more we rely on that, and there again, that putting on that love and those other attributes that Colossians talks about, then, the more we're going to demonstrate that calm spirit. And, even in the workplace, that is very definitely appreciated. If someone is not just on a hair trigger, if they can remain calm when there's adversity or some sort of challenge, then that person is really valued. And I think our husbands, and they will value that too. Like, even if you can remain calm, if we can remain calm in situations, that we're together, and we gave that example of being on the same side of the table, pushing back the world's problems. Well, if you're you're over here with him, you're not on opposite sides. He's not having to try to worry. Well, are you do we need to worry about you now and this problem? Like, you're over here with him, pushing against those problems of the world. And then our children too, if they see, they're watching how we handle problems and how we respond in situations. And, when something is an irritation, are we calm, or do we snap at somebody, at them or somebody else, because they're watching that. So, if they learn how to handle conflict and problems by seeing how you do it. That's our first little place that we try things out, is in the family, and that we see things as children. So, but there's so much wisdom in the book of Proverbs that talks about the words that we use, and so we just wanted to kind of tick those off. We're not going to give the references. They're all from well, from about Proverbs 10 to 15, chapters 10 to 15. These are just sprinkled in there, but we just want to kind of read them off and let this kind of soak in.
Yes. So the first one is a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And that's what I was thinking about that when you were just talking about our responses. A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. A glad heart makes a cheerful face, but by sorrow of heart, the spirit is crushed. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but the cheerful of heart has a continual feast. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened ox and hatred with it.
Yeah, I've always liked that one. Like, it's better to have a little and everybody's happy than, if you have this great meal and nobody's speaking or whatever.
Grouchy or, yes, silent treatment and all that.
Right, and just kind of going on, the heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil things. The wise of heart is called discerning, and sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. The heart of the wise makes his speech judicious and adds persuasiveness to his lips. Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Better is a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, and the tongue of the wise brings healing. So much wisdom and just
they're so important.
Yes, are the words that we use, so we can build others up, we can tear them down, we can diffuse a situation or start a war. The words that we choose have power, even for our body. Sweetness to the soul and health to the body. The heart of the wise makes his speech judicious, and sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. And that is so true. Like, you're not going to get what you want usually by being argumentative. That just, that sweetness of speech is habit.
Yeah. And sometimes, Russ has this saying, silence can never be repeated.
Right.
We have to have put our input. Sometimes we can just have a gentle spirit and not say a word,
not say anything, right?
Because we have to weigh those as you talk about in your book. We weigh our words carefully,
right? And then I didn't include this in here, but even thinking about James, where it says be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. We could add slow to post, maybe, like slow to comment.
Slow to comment.
Slow to comment. So, because that is what we can get drawn into down the rabbit hole with all that. But part of that is just okay. It's easy to be nice when somebody's nice to you, but how do we respond when something bothers us? So that is the time to employ these and think about these things is, okay, how are we going to respond when something gets in there and aggravates or irritates? And, part of the humility that we've been talking about, that submission requires humility. It involves not being easily offended. If someone is easily offended, really pride is at the root of that, because it's like, okay, why are you offended? Well, somebody has not appreciated something about, let's say somebody said something about us because of our Southern accents, like we were dumb or something. Well, we'd be like, well, we'd be offended at that, because that's a characteristic of us. Now, we're not dumb, but that would be something that we might get offended at, because somebody has recognized a characteristic in us, and we think, oh no, they shouldn't. We don't come across that way. But it's because somebody maybe has not appreciated our position or our some quality about us or something like that. And really pride is at the root of that. Even though sometimes it might be justified, like somebody shouldn't just make fun of you because of your accent or whatever, or assume something about you. That's not right. But it's just, you know what I'm saying? That's just an example. But so, we need to think about how often or what causes us to take offense, and are we being too touchy, too prickly, too easily offended?
Well, there are things we can be offended, by, like language or
Right.
bad language.
Yeah.
Wholesome talk. I mean, yeah, we can have offenses for sure.
Right. Yeah. And there are some reasons to do that. But if it's something personal, I mean, we can be offended because, yes, I'd rather you wouldn't use that language because it's just not, it's not polite or whatever, that we can kind of get offended that way. But sometimes we can get offended at things that we shouldn't, we're too easy to take offense. I think that's what we have to watch. Thinking again about the words that we use. Mark has a saying. He has a lot of little sayings, but one of them is, you can either be right or you can be happy. And so, and while he says that tongue in cheek, it really is worth thinking about that. Some things just aren't worth arguing about, and just think about before you pick at somebody, whether it's in your household or whether it's a stranger or whatever, is that really worth it? What is the point? This kind of thing. So I think that just kind of goes along with the not being easily offended, just.
I had a practice that I started years ago, and I don't know if I heard it from somebody or I don't think I came up with it myself, but if there was something, if Russ and I were having a disagreement over something or something with the kids, I would sort of in that moment step back in my mind and say, is this something that's going to matter in 48 hours?
Right.
That I put the dishes in the wrong cabinet, or, these trivial things that we can get upset about, or whatever it was, or even with our kids, is this really going to matter? Now, if it does matter and, later on, it'll be something that will continue to matter, so it's a principle, or, you can't hurt your sister, or, there's certain things, you can't do. So I kind of put that into practice. And, I think whether it's a situation, I wrote this, opinion, or a behavior, does it really hold value or importance after this moment? Or are we just trying to get at somebody?
Right. Yeah. So these are practical things. Those proverbs, or those verses in Proverbs, those are practical things for you to think about, that, the words that we speak and that we choose to use, that they are important, and this can affect, the peace in your home, in your workplace, in your marriage, with your children, and in every area of life. So this is why we're talking about the words that we use in this chapter. And, just giving somebody the benefit of the doubt, before you engage somebody, even online. I mean, I know, I've done this a couple of times where I put a comment on something, and people just, that I don't even know you start commenting or whatever. And it's just, that can really destroy your peace. Have you ever done that?
I try not to.
Yeah, I know. But, sometimes you just see something and you just, comment, and, but anyway, but we just, we need to ask ourselves, what the point is, and if it really matters, and could I give this person grace, and I think, hopefully we have good examples in that. I know my mother was always one to do that she just always seemed to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and she seemed to pour out pour out that grace. So I hope I learned that from her as well. But and hopefully we all have those mentors in our lives, especially as women, that we can look at, and hopefully it was our mothers. Hopefully.
And I had the same experience. Just we always were taught to give people the benefit of the doubt. That driver is driving crazy, or does a quick lane change. Well, you just don't know. They might be in a hurry. I would hear all these things from my parents, well, we just don't know what they're going, somebody's going through, that they would have, that kind of attitude or that reaction. There was just always so much grace extended, to people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I even think about, and this is, I hadn't even planned to say this, but I think about this often, how my mother's side of the family, the Tanners, they were a big family like yours. There were 6 of them, and they always, it was just like whoever wanted to come in, whoever wanted to come to the house, they were just always hospitable, and always, even if someone had a little bit of a rough background, even though they themselves were very, they lived very, much righteously, I guess you could say. But that, they were just always welcoming. There were times that they took people in that, had maybe just, had a rough past and needed a place to be, and this kind of thing. So that, I kind of grew up in that, with that mindset. And so I think that was part of my mother's, maybe, giving people the benefit of the doubt, being kind of for the underdog, kind of thing. So anyway, that is all kind of tied in, I think, to, using those words and properly, and pouring out grace to people, giving people grace, extending that grace. So, now after this chapter, we did not have any questions. Y'all may come up with your own. We're kind of doing this a little bit different than the way that I suggested in the book, actually, because so just because some of these are taking us a little bit longer to wade through. So we'll have some that are shorter, some that are longer. After some of the chapters, I have prayer time and personal insight. So you might just, just kind of journal what you are thinking about, your prayers, how the Lord might be speaking to you through that chapter. And then we have prayers a prayer at the end of that. So we just want to, as we're wrapping this up, before we go into our recipe, I'll just read this prayer at the end here. It says, Lord, even when I am frustrated, help me to learn to answer people with gentleness. Help me to submit to your will for this area of my life, and may the words of my mouth be acceptable to you. Amen. So just a short prayer. That might be a good one to pray for every morning if this is an area that you feel like the Lord needs to, you need to work on, or he's sort of speaking to you on this area. That might be a good one just to tape up somewhere, and pray that in the morning. So,
especially if you go into like a hard environment every day, or hostile, environment, that would be, Lord, just help me to learn to answer people with gentleness.
Gentleness, right. Gentleness and respect. Okay. Well, that was good. Thank you for helping me.
I love it.
Through that there.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
I guess have a recipe for us?
I do have a recipe. We always try to figure out, okay, what will y'all like?
Yes.
Now this is a potato casserole. You make a potato casserole. So we've not done this before, have we?
I don't think so. You did Did you do mashed potatoes one time, or macaroni and cheese? I know you did.
Yeah, macaroni and cheese. Yeah, I wonder, because I know you're. I think what I'm thinking about is we talked about one time how
my hash brown casserole.
I make the hash brown casserole, and it was a ground chook or something. because you didn't make it. Okay. But this is a cheese potato casserole. So this is actually Mark's mother had this in her recipes.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, you take a package of hash browns, and you can do either kind. I guess the shredded or those diced. A stick of butter, a fourth of an onion chopped. Although I just, I do more than that. I think that's not quite enough onion. I'll probably adjust that because I think I usually do. A cup of cheese, like cheddar cheese, a cup of sour cream, 1 can of cream of chicken, and a teaspoon of salt. Now, this recipe has 1 cup crushed cornflakes. I'm not down with the cornflakes. I do Ritz crackers and then pepper to taste.
Yeah.
So you're going to melt the margarine, like 2/3 of that stick, in a 10 by 13 pan. Put the hash browns in there, put the onion on top, put the cheese on top, mix your sour cream soup, salt and pepper, and spread it on top of that cheese. And then you melt the remaining butter and mix it with the Ritz crackers. Then put that on top and bake at 350 for 40 minutes uncovered. So you can make little tweaks to that, but that's always a crowd pleaser.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My kids, they even have a sort of a war over shredded or diced hash browns.
Oh, okay. Which do you like to do?
Family divided on that. They like
House divided.
they like the shredded. And one time, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I just grabbed a bag at the store. Well, it was diced. So I ate it because it was what I had.
Yeah.
And you would have thought that I had destroyed the recipe. Like, it tastes the same. The content is the same, but so now they've gotten to where they don't care. They eat it either way. But because I'm like, when COVID happened, you couldn't get sometimes the shredded.
Yeah, I've had it where, like, my potato soup, I'll do with either one, or just fresh potatoes. That's even better,
Yeah, that's even better. So anyway,
but is that kind of similar to the way you do yours?
Yeah, the way you construct that one's different because I just put everything in a big bowl. I mix everything together, except for the topping.
Yeah,
and that's part of the butter. But everything, the cheese, the sour cream,
it's kind of
2 cans of cream of chicken because it makes it a lot creamier.
Yeah,
I found sometimes when I just did the one, it wasn't enough and it was a little bit more dry.
Well, that's a good tip if you want it kind of creamier. Yeah.
And I just get it all in a baking dish, spray the baking dish, put it 9 by 13. Then I use my topping. Now we are cornflake people. And so weird. Andrew, my son-in-law, who's from Illinois, said that his mom has done frosted flakes.
Oh, okay. Frosted flakes.
He wants me to try that. And I'm like,
you're like, that'd be good. I guess it'd give you a little bit of sweet, but I don't know about that.
I'm like, wow, I've never, but yes, I love the Ritz cracker topping too. So,
so with Easter coming up, we might have to do a dressing recipe. Do y'all do dressing at Easter?
No.
You don't?
No.
Yeah. No. Some people do. I think we used to.
Although I have a pan in the freezer right now for Christmas.
There you go.
So
I always used to think it was some big mystery that was like handed down and nobody could know it except for 2 women in the family. But I realize now it's really not that hard to make. It's like, I always just thought it was like, I don't know.
Right.
You just, it was unknowable or something.
No one could obtain it. Right. It's this one person in the family.
Right. Like, they've got to make the dressing, some complicated thing. Right. So I guess it is kind of one of those things like a pound cake, though. It's like you need to get it right, and not everybody likes the same seasonings on it, too. Like, I like a lot of sage.
Oh.
Some people don't like a lot of sage.
Yeah. My people wouldn't eat it if it had. I do put sage in mine, but not a lot.
Not a lot.
We went to this family thing and one of the cousins had put like so much sage that it was
me probably.
It was only sage dressing. I'm telling you, I had never had it and she even admitted, she was like, "Oh no, that is too much."
Heavy-handed on the sage. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to chapter 8.
Yes. We're working our way through. So, what's that? Okay. Yeah. So it's why submit if you want to grab your copy, and then you can have it and work through it with us. And we're not reading it word for word or anything, so there'll be some nuggets in there maybe that we're not giving you, but we're trying to hit the highlights and do the best we can. So, but thank y'all for joining us today, and hope everybody has a great rest of the week. And we will see you next time on the Stir It Up podcast.
Thank you for joining us today. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all.